On January 13, 2012, the Costa Concordia, a 7-year-old cruise ship operated by Costa Cruises, was beginning a cruise around the Mediterranean Sea. However, it veered off course near Tuscany, getting too close to the island and hitting a rock formation underwater. This collision caused the ship to tilt to one side and start sinking, eventually coming to rest unevenly on a submerged ledge. Despite a 6-hour rescue operation that managed to evacuate most passengers, 33 people lost their lives, including 27 passengers, 5 crew members, and later, 1 member of the salvage team. This is the inside story. On the night of January 13th, 2012, the Costa Concordia, an Italian cruise ship, was sailing near Isola del Giglio, Italy. It had just begun a week-long cruise from Civitavecchia, Italy, heading to Savona and several other ports. With over 3,000 passengers and more than 1,000 crew members on board, the ship struck a reef on its left side around 9:42 or 9:45 p.m. local time. This reef, known locally as Le Scole, is about 8,000 meters south of Giglio Porto Harbor on the island's east coast. The initial impact occurred about 8 meters below the water's surface at a place called Scola Piccoia, which is the outermost part of Le Scole. This collision caused a 35-meter tear in the ship's left side below the waterline. The force of this impact ripped 2 large strips of metal from the ship's hull, which were later found on the seabed about 92 to 96 meters away from the main island. Shortly after the collision, the ship's captain, Francesco Schettino, was informed by the head of the engine room that the hull had suffered a 35-meter tear, allowing water to flood in and submerge the generators and engines. With no propulsion or emergency power, the Costa Concordia drifted northward from Le Scole past Giglio Porto. Schettino then reported that several instruments were not working properly. There are conflicting reports about whether the ship tilted to the left immediately after impact, or if it began tilting to the right later on. Around 10:10 p.m., the Costa Concordia turned southward while listing to the right, eventually coming to a stop around 10:44 p.m. at Punta Gabbianara in about 20 meters of water. The ship was tilted at an angle of about 70 degrees. Before approaching the island, Schettino admitted to disabling the alarm system for the Costa Concordia's computer navigation. He claimed he relied on his visual familiarity with the area because he had made similar maneuvers several times before. Schettino told investigators that he observed waves crashing on the reef and attempted a sharp turn, which ended up causing the hull to hit the reef. He acknowledged making a mistake in judgment by ordering the turn too late. Initially, Schettino stated that the ship was approximately the length of the vessel away from the shore and collided with an uncharted rock. The ship's first officer then informed investigators that Schettino had forgotten his reading glasses in his cabin and repeatedly asked Ambrosio to check the radar for him. Schettino claimed that the Costa Cruises management instructed him to perform a sail pass salute on the night of the disaster. A similar sail pass had been conducted on August 14, 2011, but not as close to Le Scole. The 2011 sail pass had been approved by the cruise line and took place during daylight hours as part of an island festival. Normally, ships pass about 8 kilometers offshore. Costa Cruises confirmed that the route taken in 2012 was not a pre-programmed route for passing Giglio. Passengers were having dinner in the dining hall when they heard a sudden and loud bang. A crew member announced over the intercom that it was due to an electrical failure. Despite the alarming noise, cabin stewards reassured guests that everything was under control to prevent panic. And, in an ironic twist, the song "My Heart Will Go On" from the movie Titanic was playing in the background. Shortly after the bang, the ship lost power in the cabins. The ship began to shake, causing chaos in the dining hall with dishes crashing to the floor, people running, and some even falling down the stairs. Survivors recalled that the ship tilted suddenly to one side, making it difficult to move around. Passengers were later instructed to put on their life jackets as a precaution. About 30 minutes before the order to abandon ship was given, a crew member at a muster station reassured passengers that the issues had been resolved and invited everyone to return to their cabins. As the ship turned around, it started leaning to one side, making it challenging to launch the lifeboats. The president of Costa Cruises, Gianni Onorato, mentioned that the rapid tilting of the ship made the normal process of evacuating with lifeboats almost impossible. During the initial contact at 10:12 p.m. between the port of Livorno's harbor master, Alessandro Tozzi, and the Costa Concordia after hitting the reef, a crew member aboard the cruise ship claimed they were experiencing only an electrical issue from a blown generator. A passenger's video at 10:20 p.m. showed the aforementioned worry passengers wearing life jackets being told by a crew member that everything is under control and advising them to return to their cabins. Before the voyage, approximately 600 passengers who had recently boarded hadn't gone through a mandatory lifeboat drill. Around the same time, a patrol boat from the financial police tried to contact the Costa Concordia but got no response. Captain Schettino had 3 telephone conversations with the cruise line's crisis management officer. At 10:26 p.m., Schettino informed the harbor master that the ship was taking in water on the left side and requested a tugboat. Port authorities weren't informed about the disaster until 10:42 p.m., about an hour after the original collision, and the order to evacuate the ship wasn't given until 10:50 p.m. Some passengers jumped into the water to swim ashore, while others, prepared to leave the ship, were delayed by crew members for up to 45 minutes as they hesitated to lower the lifeboats. Some reports suggest the ship didn't tilt until 11:15 p.m., so if Schettino had ordered the evacuation earlier, the lifeboats could have been launched sooner, potentially saving more lives. However, an expert argued that delaying the launch might be justified due to the risks of launching lifeboats while the ship was still moving. Second Captain Roberto Bozio is said to have coordinated some of the deck officers in the evacuation, starting before Schettino's order. Many junior officers and crew members, aware of the seriousness of the situation, began preparing lifeboats and moving passengers from their cabins before the official order, which has been described as a mutiny. Although most of the ship's multinational staff weren't qualified sailors, they received basic safety training to assist in emergencies. Despite language barriers, crew members attempted to aid passengers during the crisis. Some passengers claimed the crew was unhelpful or untrained in launching lifeboats, but crew members denied this, stating they did their best to assist passengers. 3 people reportedly drowned after jumping overboard, and another 7 were critically injured. The local fire chief stated that his team rescued about 100 people from the water and saved around 60 others who were trapped on the boat. 5 helicopters from the Italian Coast Guard, Navy, and Air Force took turns airlifting survivors from the ship and transporting them to safety. Investigators found that Schettino had left the ship by 11:30 p.m. During a telephone call from the Coast Guard to Schettino, Captain Gregorio De Falco from Livorno repeatedly ordered Schettino to return to the ship from his lifeboat and take charge of the ongoing passenger evacuation. At one point in the call, De Falco became so frustrated with Schettino's delay that he raised his voice and ordered him to get back on board using strong language. But despite these calls, Schettino never returned to the ship from the lifeboat he claimed he had fallen into. At 1:04 a.m., an Air Force officer who was lowered onto the ship by helicopter reported that there were still 100 people on board. Father Rafael Malena, the ship's priest, said he was among the last to leave the ship at around 1:30 in the morning. The deputy mayor of Isola del Giglio, Mario Pellegrini, who participated in the rescue operations, praised the ship's doctor and a young Costa Concordia officer, Simone Canessa, for their assistance. He and Canessa worked together until 5:30 a.m. One of the missing crew members, a waiter, was last seen helping passengers. By 3:05 a.m., 600 passengers were evacuated to the mainland by ferry. At 3:44, the Air Force officer reported that 40 to 50 people were still on board. At 4:46, the evacuation was marked as complete in the Port of Livorno's harbor master log. The following day, the survivors were taken to Porto Santo Stefano, where the First Coordination and Assistance Center was set up. Prime Minister Mario Monti announced his intention to propose granting the gold medal for civil valor for the conduct during the rescue. Between January 14th and 30th, 2012, rescue divers from the Italian Navy, Coast Guard, and the Fire and Rescue Service searched the ship for missing people. The head of the Coast Guard diving team described the conditions inside the ship, still perched on a ledge, as disastrous. Pitch black conditions, with large furniture drifting around, made the rescue operation hazardous. Divers would find a way into the ship, secure obstacles such as a mattress, and make noise to alert trapped people. They worked in pairs for safety and searched each assigned area slowly in a zigzag manner. The search dives lasted 50 minutes each, with extra air tanks positioned inside the ship in case of emergency. Divers wore 2 headlamps on their helmets due to varying underwater visibility. They also marked their route with a line to guide them back out in low visibility, similar to procedures in recreational wreck diving. On January 14th, divers searched the ship until nightfall. They continued searching for survivors trapped in the ship, rescuing a South Korean newlywed couple who were unaware of the partial sinking, and a ship's purser with a broken leg. On January 16th, violent waters shifted the ship, interrupting rescue work and causing fears of the ship being pushed into deeper waters or fuel leakage. Operations resumed about 3 hours later. Throughout the process, rescuers used explosives to create holes in the ship's hull to reach inaccessible areas. On January 18th, rescue efforts were briefly suspended when the ship shifted again, but resumed shortly after. By January 20th, the ship started shifting slowly. Half a week later, divers found the body of the 16th victim. The following week, the body of a female crew member was recovered. And a few days after that, the search in the submerged part of the ship was terminated due to safety concerns for divers caused by the deformed hull. On February 22nd, 8 bodies were found in the wreck, and a platform was set up for their recovery. Recovery efforts were suspended due to bad weather on the same day, but on March 4th, officials announced the use of sophisticated equipment to find more bodies. On March 22nd, 5 bodies were discovered between the wreck and the seabed. On January 15th, 2013, the final 2 bodies were thought to have been located but could not be recovered due to their location near the stern. The search continued after the ship was uprighted on September 17th, 2013. On September 26th, unidentified remains were found and subjected to DNA testing. On October 8th, the believed body to be of a missing crew member was found. DNA analysis later confirmed the identity of the body. Additional bone fragments of unknown identity were also found in the wreck. On October 23, 2013, it was announced that the search for the missing while the wreck was still in the water was completed as far as possible. Depending on the outcome of identification analysis of remains already found, further search activities might be conducted for the missing crew member after the ship was removed from the water. On August 6th and 7th, 2014, human remains were found on the wreck moored in the port of Genoa. On November 3rd, 2014, the final body was discovered in the wreckage of the ship. Following the disaster, there were numerous reports of people illegally entering the wreck site to steal items as souvenirs. Stolen items included the ship's bell, cash registers, jewelry, furniture, artwork, and various other smaller items. It's believed that these thieves may have gained access to the ship's interior through openings created by search and rescue teams. To protect the wreck site and prevent further environmental damage, authorities prohibited private boats from entering Giglio Porto and established a non-navigation zone of 1 nautical mile around the ship. Concerns were raised about potential oil spills due to poor weather conditions. So as a precaution, a floating barrier was installed to contain any oil leakage. To prevent pollution and aid in the ship's removal, the oil and fuel tanks on board were emptied. Additionally, measures were taken to protect marine life in the area. A group of giant fan mussels were relocated to a safer location, away from the wreck site. The island where the ship ran aground is home to various marine mammals and is a popular destination for scuba diving. Once the fuel was extracted, efforts focused on removing the wreck from its resting place. The ship was stabilized and uprighted using a method called parbuckling. Special equipment and platforms were used to lift and support the ship during the salvage operation. The salvage operation was complex and costly, involving multiple companies and experts. Once the ship was righted, it was towed to the port of Genoa for dismantling. The upper decks and superstructure were removed, and the hull was taken to a dry dock for the final dismantling. The entire process, including scrapping the ship and cleaning the site, took several years to complete. After the wreck was removed, efforts were made to clean and restore the site. This included cleaning the ocean floor, removing debris and anchor blocks, and dismantling temporary structures used during the salvage operation. The project, known as Phase WP9, continued for several months to ensure the site was properly remediated. During the scrapping process, all parts of the Costa Concordia were recycled. This involved removing furniture, interior structures, and waste from the ship. The project began in October 2014 and aimed to recycle as much material as possible while ensuring proper disposal of waste. The Italian Marine Casualty Investigation Central Board, a part of the Coast Guard, is responsible for investigating maritime accidents in Italian waters. After the Costa Concordia disaster, there were calls from the International Chamber of Shipping for the prompt release of the investigation findings. International experts cautioned against speculating on the reasons for the ship's partial sinking, suggesting that its size was unlikely to be the main issue. The investigation aimed to uncover various aspects of the incident, not just focusing on Captain Schettino, but also examining the roles of other individuals and companies involved. However, by January 2013, the technical investigation report had not yet been made public. This delay faced criticism, with the Casualty Investigation Board being accused of withholding information due to legal constraints imposed by the Italian prosecuting team, who had seized vital data, including the voyage recorder. Survivors were called to testify in a hearing held on the 3rd of March. Although Captain Schettino tested negative for drugs and alcohol, there were disputes over the reliability of these tests by a group suing Costa Cruises. Prosecutors alleged that Schettino had intentionally slowed down the ship to extend his dinner time and then sped up to make up for the lost time just before the sail passed. In France, a preliminary inquiry was launched on the 2nd of February 2012 to determine any criminal responsibility and assess psychological harm among survivors. However, cooperation between Germany and Italy in investigating the accident ceased in December 2015. This was due to the Italian public prosecutors and courts hindering the Federal Bureau for Maritime Casualty Investigation's ability to conduct a thorough investigation. Francesco Schettino, born in 1960 in Meta, Naples, had been working for Costa Cruises for 11 years. He, along with First Officer Ciro Ambrosio, was arrested following the disaster. Schettino faced accusations of manslaughter and violations of Italian law related to the shipwreck. These included causing the accident due to negligence, abandoning passengers in need, and not being the last person to leave the ship. During the validation hearing on January 17, 2012, the Court of Grosseto considered evidence from various sources, including reports from the Coast Guard, testimonies from the ship's crew, and records from maritime authorities. Schettino was initially released from jail, but placed under house arrest with strict conditions, including restrictions on communication. Additional charges were brought against Schettino on February 23rd, accusing him of abandoning passengers and failing to inform maritime authorities. He was later released from house arrest, but required to reside in Meta di Sereno. Investigations aimed to understand why the ship did not issue a mayday call and why it was navigating so close to the coast. Questions also arose about the delay in initiating the evacuation. A video broadcast on the 11th of February, 2012, showed the commotion on the bridge after the collision. Schettino's casual response to reports of passengers boarding lifeboats raised eyebrows among investigators. Reports of traces of cocaine found on Schettino's hair samples surfaced on February 19th, although it wasn't detected in his urine. There were also claims that the ship may have been carrying mafia-owned cocaine, although senior officers likely did not know about it. On the 22nd of February in 2012, 4 officers who were on board and 3 managers of Costa Cruises became subjects of investigation and faced charges related to manslaughter, causing the shipwreck, and failing to communicate with maritime authorities. One of the ship's voyage data recorders, or VDRs, designed to float, was found and recovered. Another VDR, which stored different data, was located on January 17th. A third recorder was situated in a submerged section of the ship, making it hard to access. By the 19th of January 2012, all the data storage devices from the ship's control panel, including hard disks, were retrieved. Among these, one hard disk contained videos from cameras positioned near the control board, expected to show the movements of the ship's captain and officers. Additionally, the chief prosecutor received a video from the financial police, filmed from their patrol boat, capturing footage of the ship between 10:30 p.m. and 11:10 or at 11:20 p.m. On March 3, 2012, in Grosseto, judges held a hearing open to survivors, other affected individuals, and their lawyers, but not to the general public and media. 4 specialists were tasked with reviewing the VDR data and presenting their findings at a hearing scheduled for July 21, 2012. On July 20, 2013, 5 individuals were found guilty of manslaughter, negligence, and causing the shipwreck. Roberto Ferranini, the company's crisis director, received the longest sentence of 2 years and 10 months, followed by the cabin service director at 2.5 years. 3 crew members received sentences ranging from 1 to 2 years. Ferranini, who wasn't on the ship, was convicted of downplaying the severity of the disaster and delaying a proper response. The hotel director was held responsible for the chaotic evacuation. Helmsman Bin was found guilty of steering the ship in the wrong direction after Captain Schettino ordered a corrective maneuver. It's noted that none of these individuals were likely to go to jail because sentences shorter than 2 years for nonviolent crimes are usually suspended in Italy, and longer sentences can be appealed or replaced with community service. Lawyers for the victims criticized the sentences as inadequate and considered appealing to reverse the plea bargains that led to reduced sentences. Costa Cruises avoided a trial in April by agreeing to pay a €1 million fine. Ultimately, none of the 5 officers were incarcerated because their sentences were, as you guessed, suspended. In a separate trial for manslaughter and causing the ship's loss, Captain Francesco Schettino sought a plea bargain agreement. During his trial in October 2013, a 26-year-old Moldovan woman confessed to being Schettino's lover and a non-paying passenger on the ship. The prosecution alleged that her presence on the ship caused confusion and distracted the captain. Helmsman Jacob Bin didn't show up in court in March 2014 to testify and was believed to be hiding out in Indonesia. In April, Roberto Ferranini informed the court that Schettino asked me to tell the maritime authorities that the collision was due to a blackout on the ship, but I strongly objected. Passengers testified in May that if they had followed the officer's instructions to return to their cabins, they would have drowned. In February 2015, Schettino was found guilty and sentenced to 16 years in prison. He appealed against the sentence, which was upheld in May of 2016, and finally, in May of 2017. He is currently serving his sentence in Rebibbia Prison, Rome. Costa Cruises is jointly owned by two separate companies, Carnival Corporation and Carnival plc. In response to the disaster, Carnival Corporation announced on January 30th, 2012, that it would bring in outside experts to review various aspects of the accident and the company's procedures, including emergency response, organization, training, and implementation. Initially, Costa Cruises offered to cover Captain Schettino's legal expenses, but later retracted this offer. When the Costa Concordia was deemed beyond repair and had to be scrapped, Costa Cruises ordered a new ship from the same shipyard that built the Costa Concordia. This new vessel, named the Costa Diadema, was launched in November 2013 and entered service a year later in November 2014. Italy's Minister of Environment advocated for an end to sail-by salutes, a tradition that had led to visible accidents. UNESCO urged Italy to reroute cruise ships to avoid ecologically and culturally important areas, leading Italy to impose restrictions on ships sailing too close to marine parks. In Europe, the Maritime Safety Agency was already reviewing safety protocols when the accident occurred, and lessons from the Costa Concordia disaster were factored into these reviews. In the United States, the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure held hearings to examine the incident, safety measures, and training requirements for maritime transportation. Cruise industry associations also adopted new policies, requiring all passengers to participate in safety drills before departure, and implemented measures to improve communication and safety on board ships. In Italy, newspapers called for accountability and reflection on the disaster, with some describing it as a global embarrassment for Italy. Commentators compared the actions of Captain Schettino and Coast Guard Officer DeFalco, highlighting contrasting attitudes and their symbolic significance for the nation. Recognizing the bravery of the Costa Concordia crew, Lloyd's of London awarded them the title of Seafarers of the Year. To commemorate the lives lost, the mayor of Giglio and Costa Cruises teamed up, agreeing to place a large boulder from the ship's hull on the island as a memorial. Following the disaster, there was increased scrutiny of safety regulations for passenger ships. International Maritime Organization requirements mandate passenger drills within 24 hours of departure, and the ability to launch lifeboats quickly in case of an emergency. Ships now must have enough lifeboats for all passengers and crew, with specific requirements for hard lifeboats. With these strategies in place, the hope is to never witness a disaster as bad as the Costa Concordia ever again in our lifetimes. A feat much easier said than done.